Good evening, and welcome. Tonight we have the Valemount All Candidates Forum with the four candidates. Come on in, just come on down there. There's just some people to the back. I want to thank everybody for coming, obviously, and I want to remind you right off the bat that voting day is Monday, October the 19th, and please exercise your right to vote. This forum has been organized by the Rocky Mountain Goat News, the Valemount and Area Chamber of Commerce, Valemount Community TV, and the Valley Sentinel. Tonight, Pat Bennett from the Valemount chapter of Toastmasters International will be the official timekeeper. And thank you to both Toastmasters and to Pat for doing this tonight. I want to just very briefly introduce to you the four candidates for the newly created riding of Prince George, Peace, Northern Rockies. In alphabetical order, for the Green Party is Elizabeth Beggar. For the New Democratic Party, it's Kathy Dickey. The Liberal Party, Matt Shaw. And the Conservative Party is Bob Zimmer. The Libertarian Party candidate, Todd Keller, was invited but was unable to attend due to work commitments. We're just going to start by explaining the format real briefly, and then we'll get into the questions shortly after that. So, the format is as follows. Candidates will each make their opening statements. Candidates will then be asked 4 written questions submitted by the organizers. Verbal questions will then be accepted from the floor. 1 question per person. Time permitting, additional questions may be asked later, once those who wish to, or who have had an opportunity to ask 1 question after that. You must ask your question from one of the 2 microphones. Questions will only be responded to if asked from a microphone. If you're unable to make it to a microphone, there is another microphone floating around just down here, and we'll come to you if you're unable to get to a microphone. Okay, so just put your hand up and we'll work our way to you. Following the open floor, candidates will make their closing statements, and then at the end, candidates will be available in the lobby after the forum for further one-on-one questions. And so we begin. So earlier we had a quick little draw. Mrs. Plummer was kind enough to pull cards for us to decide who's first, second, third, and fourth. And as per Mrs. Plummer, the opening statements will go in the following order. First, the NDP candidate. Second, the Conservative candidate. Third will be the Liberal, and fourth is Green. And then we will rotate through that order throughout the night. Okay, any questions? You good to roll? Great. So, if we're good, then we will begin with opening statements, starting with the New Democratic Party candidate, Kathy Dickey.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for taking an interest in making Canada the strong, proud country it once was. So again, thank you for coming. I thank my fellow candidates for wanting to serve Canada in a role as MP for this area. Second, I want to actually offer my condolences for the 2, I guess they were Valemount residents that lost their lives in a vehicle accident earlier this afternoon. My sister and I drove, and so the highway was blocked, so we had to come down through Dunster. And so again, so my condolences to the families. Again, with that being said, so we had We had to take the road through Dunster, back through this way and backtrack. First time to Valemount, absolutely beautiful country. And we arrived a little bit late. We had something to eat. I didn't even have time to dress up or anything like that, so I apologize if I look rather casual. I'm wearing running shoes. I actually do have nice clothes in my suitcase. But I've been asked in terms of why I've put my name forward to run as the NDP candidate for this election. I come from a family where my father served the community. He served the community. He was on the school board. He was on the hospital board. He was, the Turning Point, at the Friendship Center. He was so actively involved in the community, not only the First Nation community, but also the wider community as well. In terms of, he just wanted to make the world a better place for everyone. He wanted people to be able to get a good education. He wanted to have good health care. He wanted people just to be able to achieve their potential. And my father passed away December 2008 at the age of 95 years old. And when he passed, he couldn't even finish his years out in Fort Nelson. He had to be placed in Pooskoopi, which was 250 miles south of Fort Nelson, of his home. He couldn't finish his days there because we didn't have the health services in Fort Nelson. And my brother, when he found out I was running, he said, Dad would be really proud of you because you're continuing his legacy in terms of wanting to make the world a better place for people. And what really motivated me this time was that I've seen the state of Canada, and I'm really worried about the future of Canada. I've born and raised in the north in Fort Nelson, 13-hour drive from here, not counting stops to restaurants. But again, this is a huge riding. But again, born and raised in the north, I've seen the boom and bust economy. I've lived through it. I've seen when the forest industry slowed down or actually stopped in Fort Nelson. And I've seen the effect on our families. I've seen the effect on the businesses. Whereas businesses, they've had to shut down because they don't have the customers. And I really, really am concerned. I'm concerned with the economy in terms of, I think the Conservative government have put all the eggs in one basket. And we need to have a diversified economy. I'm to understand Valemount, they're really been hit by the downturn in the forest industry as well. We need to have a stable economy.
I'm sorry, it's my fault. We've kind of sort of asked that the candidates keep their initial opening comments to 2 minutes. And I should probably go over the lights with you down there.
5 minutes.
Sorry.
Somebody told me 5 minutes.
I have 2, I do believe. Yeah, sorry about that. So what's happening down here is Pat Bennett has her lovely little lights down here. So the yellow light, once you hit that yellow light, you've got 30 seconds left. Okay, my apologies. That's probably my fault. I should have gone over that with you. Okay. Oh, you've had a yellow and a red and another red one and a red one and a yellow one. You're done. Okay. Okay. That's your mulligan, or mine, I guess. We're not even golfing. Sorry. With that in mind, I'll try and keep it brief, and I hate to interrupt. So I'm sure you can all see the lights in front of Pat there. So thank you, and I apologize. The second statement is from the Conservative candidate, Bob Zimmer, please.
Everybody, can you hear me at the back? Yeah, thanks for having us here tonight. For me, I'm not going to read my speech. For me, when we talked about the riding redistribution and I was getting Valemount, I was more than pleased. It's an absolutely beautiful place in the world, really, not to mention just BC. And that long name that he had to say at the beginning was Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies. The Northern Rockies part is my fault, and I say that apologies to the media, because that's where I often hear the complaints, because it's such a long name. But the riding, it didn't mention that we had the Rockies in it previously, and how can you not? You know, I mean, you guys see it every day in Valemount, and I see it in the northern part in Fort Nelson at times, so it's beautiful. But I think we have a good record. I'm quite positive about what we've done. We've weathered quite the storm in the world. The global economy is struggling at times. and depending on the country. In Canada, we've weathered the storm exceptionally well. Are things great? I think in Canada we're close. We do need to diversify too, and that's why we've been working on opening up new trade markets all around the globe, while ensuring the resource-based economies like we have here in Valemount remain steady and stable. I do think, though, we need to work at some of those markets that are tough here, like forestry. We need to make sure that those markets open up again. And some of the new promise, like the ski hill coming to Valemount too, that some of those ideas with great promise are actually realized here, because it's beautiful riding, and I think the people of Canada need to see it. We just want it to be seen in a certain way, environmentally sound way. But I'm glad to be a candidate for this riding, and hopefully on October 19th I get to be your MP. Thanks.
Third candidate is Matt Shaw from the Liberal Party.
Thanks. Whoa, it's pretty loud. Can you? Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So my name is Matt Shaw, and I'm a newcomer to politics, although I've been thinking about it for 30 years, and I've been sort of preparing for it for a long time. And I speak French, and I've got a lot of public policy experience, and I've done lots of degrees in political science and things like that. But it really seemed like the right time to get into politics now, simply because I really feel like the way the country is going, and I don't want to drag Bob down. I think he's a nice person, but I'm going to take a few swipes at his government, because I feel like a lot of Canadians really instinctively know that the fundamental nature of Canada is in the process of changing. And do we want to go down another 4 years down this path? I think that there comes a time where a government has been in power so long that it gets so disconnected, so self-centered, and so beholden to special interests that it really kind of loses touch with the people it is supposed to be trying to represent. And I feel very much that that's the way it's going. Now, I'm very interested in economics. One thing about it is I'm kind of a Paul Martin liberal. I've met Paul Martin. I've been around a lot of very powerful liberals who are some of the best money managers and best fiscal managers in the world. And the liberals actually have a plan. And the plan, we need to do something, because the fact is that we can't stay on the course that we're already on. Sorry, I didn't even see the yellow light. I was so absorbed in what I was saying there. So anyway, I think that there's a reality and then there's a narrative. And I think that the Conservatives want us to believe that they are good money managers, when all evidence seems to really contradict that. And I can get into very much specifics as the night progresses. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have a lot of time to have complex sort of presentations about that. Anyway, thanks very much. I've taken my 2 minutes.
Thank you. And then finally, from the Green Party is Elizabeth Beggar.
Hello, thanks for having me tonight. I just got here from Chetwynd. I was there this morning talking to people in that little community. Our riding is so vast and huge, I feel like I don't have enough time to reach out, but I decided to run for the Green Party in this election this year. I was asked a few times and I said no, because it's a hard riding for the Greens. It's traditionally oil and gas and very conservative, and I knew I had a really big upward hill to climb if I went on board. And I sat back and I decided to do it because I decided I can't sit back and just engage and talk about the change that I need to see, but nothing's changing. I feel like Canada is so sad what's happening. I used to backpack and go all over the world traveling, and proudly with the Canadian flag on my backpack, and now it's embarrassing. People don't look at Canada the same as they did 10 years ago. We need to talk about climate change. It is the single most important issue that's facing our world, our country, our fellow brothers and sisters right now, and nobody's talking about it. The Greens are being shut out of debates, and I really believe it's because of climate change. That's our biggest issue that we talk about. And people, once they say, yes, Greens come and talk to us, they have to address the climate issue, and nobody else is doing that. I don't know why. Maybe it's scary, but it shouldn't be. We have a fully costed plan, a platform that rolls out a sustainable economy, a transition, and transition's a big word here. We will transition out of fossil fuels into renewables. It takes a long time, it takes years, and everyone comes with us. Nobody loses their jobs. We have a full plan to get everyone retrained out of the oil patch into green tech and green technology jobs. It's really exciting, and now's the time. Yesterday was the time to do that. So thank you for listening to me.
Now we move to the written question portion of the forum. I have 4 questions, and so what we're going to do is I'm going to give each candidate an opportunity to respond to each of the 4 questions. We're going to rotate the order through. So we're going to start with the Conservative candidate, then we'll move to the Liberal candidate, Green, and then NDP. Question number 1, and you'll have 1.5 minutes again, and we'll have the yellow light and the red light thing again. It's on the environment and industry. Climate change is believed to be caused primarily by human activity. What measures will your government take to curb the effects of existing industry that are harmful to the environment? And what policies, if any, would you implement to promote and encourage more environmentally friendly practices? So we'll begin with the Liberal candidate. You have 1.5 minutes. Oh, sorry, pardon me, Conservative. I wrote Conservative.
Right. How much time do we have again? 1.5 minutes?
1.5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the question is about environment and industry and what we've been doing already. We've already been doing a lot, despite what some would say. In terms of energy, and I'll start off this way. As a dad of 4 kids and married and happily married, the thing that I am concerned about is clean air and clean water for our kids to breathe. I like to go fishing. I think the biggest mistake is to presume that Conservatives don't care. We absolutely do. And we've been part of responsible resource development, and we understand we need to develop resources, but we need to do it responsibly and safely for the environment. And even in the oil sands, I've been up to Fort McMurray, and some of the ones that are criticized the highest. If you actually see it on the ground, you see the amount of land that's been reclaimed. There are fields where bison, and herds are vast there, and lands have been reclaimed. There's a lot of good stories for the environment while developing our resources, and I think we need to look at it that way too. Both can be done together. I will say some of the positive promise, though, that's even coming out of Valemount is geothermal. And it's an issue, as Chair of BC Caucus, is one thing is to promote renewables. And we had to present to us, and I think that's a way of the future. I still think we need, the reality is we need fossil fuels for the next foreseeable future. But that transition is coming, and we need to look at other alternatives like fossil fuel, geothermal, wind power generation, hydroelectric power, and the rest. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the Liberal candidate. If you'd like to begin.
Okay. It's a big, long question to try to distill down into 1.5 minutes. I'll say this, though. We make certain things. We exploit certain resources. We have markets for those resources, and that's not going to change. That's the reality. We need to actually get these things to market. We need to sell them successfully, and this is a part of this region. Now, the market is going to help us over time to make this transition, and we have to help it along through tax incentives and investing in clean tech. But let's not, throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, we have a lot of pipelines. Statistically, pipelines are the very best way to move oil and natural gas, and we need to continue to do that. But we don't want to take any risks with those things. We actually have to give some of those contracts to not necessarily the cheapest bidder who's going to actually build these things, but actually the ones with the best safety record. So basically, we've got to take a really balanced approach. There is going to be a time where we are going to transition out of this, but let's not let's be realistic. It's not going to happen overnight. The Liberals actually have a plan to invest in green tech and to invest in tax subsidies for people investing in trying to promote green tech and things like that. And so we just have to be very, very common sense about this whole thing.
Thank you. For the Green Party?
I'm next. Okay. The Green Party, of course, this is our big issue. Right now, Canada currently subsidizes oil and gas to the tune of $1 billion a year. We are giving $1 billion a year to the world's wealthiest companies. What we're going to do if the Green Party gets in is we're going to take all the subsidies to oil and gas away, so not one more penny goes to them. And we're going to take all that money and start subsidizing and building the green infrastructure and the green technology that we need now. And as everyone keeps saying, they have a plan in place. It needs to be now, like today. We also have a sustainable jobs plan. So as we know, local municipality infrastructure is really, we are not giving them enough money to keep up the roads, the bridges, the buildings. So we're going to use 1% of the 1 point on the GST, which is $6.4 billion a year, and we're going to give that back to local municipalities to upgrade their buildings, to retrofit all these old buildings and get them up to par, so that they're lowering their carbon footprint and carbon emissions. And that's going to take an army of electricians, carpenters, plumbers to do that. So it starts off, boosts the economy right away in a really sustainable way. So that's our plan.
Thank you. Sorry, now for the NDP.
The oil and gas industry provides a great deal of employment and services and benefits and everything for people in the north. And there's a lot of challenges that go along with that. For instance, with the fracking industry, millions of liters of fresh water are taken out of the water cycle for the fracking. And I've been saying to, we've met with industry and we've said, well, you need to find solutions to those problems. The fact is we need natural gas. When it's 30 below, I really am happy that the fact my house is heated with natural gas. We're driving around here trying to find a school. I noticed there's some propane tanks outside of some of the buildings. So I don't know how much access you have to natural gas. But again, it is a transition fuel. It is cleaner than coal. A couple years ago, I went to Asia and I saw the barge loads of coal. I saw the smog. And again, it's going to take a while for us to get away from to eventually get into renewables. But again, we need human ingenuity. Again, human beings invented fracking. Human beings can invent solutions. I've heard in England they've invented a type of paint that absorbs CO2. And I read there's an invention in the States where they can capture the carbon that leaves a vehicle. So I believe in invention. I think we can find those solutions. Thank you.
Very much. You guys were all really good at that red light thing. Well done. Making my job easy. Question number 2 is on small business growth. Small businesses make up approximately 98% of all businesses in the province. What specific measures will you introduce to make startups of small businesses easier and to help small businesses sustain and grow into medium and large businesses? Order of rotation for this question is Liberal, Green, NDP, Conservative. So if we can start with the Liberal Party.
Well, as you've implied in your question, small business is really a super important engine of the economy. And I talk to a lot of small business owners and they say, wow, things are really getting complicated. We have so many auditors and we have so many different layers of red tape and we actually have so many different things that we have to do to satisfy the government. And then we have pretty high taxes and it's really getting hard to be in small business. And a lot of people say, you know what, it's not even worth it anymore. And so let's, they basically fold their business or they don't choose to start it. Even having employees now is extremely difficult. You've got all these different regulations, and they've made it very, very difficult, with workers' compensation and various things like that. It's gotten so complicated that we're one of the most complicated countries in the G8 to even start a business. So we really have to do something about that. I know the Conservatives have said that they're very pro-business. The fact is, though, that it's pretty complicated, and it's not easy to start a business and run a business and have employees nowadays. So in any case, we have to look at streamlining that. And I would also like to see us really explore ways of lowering the small business tax rate. And that's something that's being discussed. They're talking about, 11 to 9%. That's still being examined, but we really have to make this a business-friendly environment because we depend on small business for so much of our economic growth.
Thank you. And now for the Green Party.
Putting Canadian small business owners first. We will ensure Canadian small business owners and entrepreneurs have access to the funds they need to create local jobs and revitalize local economies. Small businesses and the Canadians who own them are the central driver of our economy. They create more jobs than any other part of the economy. We will be lowering the taxes for small businesses. These incomes and profits remain in the community, providing stable employment. As an added bonus, their flexible nature allows them to respond to environmental market demands well before large corporations take action. Putting Canadian small businesses first means reducing red tape for small business owners and enacting the Think Small First legislature to ensure that new federal laws and regulations enhance rather than hinder an economical environment where local businesses and entrepreneurs can thrive. This is what, as a local sustainable community, we want our people we want jobs in the community, we want our businesses to grow. So this is very important. And lowering the taxes for small businesses will create more opportunity of them to start up and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Now for the NDP.
Small businesses are critical to our local economies. My brother and my sister-in-law ran a business for years in the oil and gas industry, and actually I was fortunate once, and I worked for my sister-in-law's company. She had a bookkeeping service and they did books for a number of small companies in Fort Nelson, and I was so amazed and admired these people who work so hard to build a business. And they just worked all the time, and they build businesses, and they provided a livelihood not only for themselves but also for other people. And one thing with the NDP, they will lower the small business tax. The Liberals mentioned they're still examining it, but the NDP will lower the business tax from 11% to 9%. They will increase the business tax for the large corporations from 15% to 17%. It was at one time was 22%, and the Conservatives dropped it down to 15%. But again, because when a small business, when they make the money, what do? They invest in their company. They buy more equipment, they hire more employees, whereas corporations, they just either pay higher salaries to the CEO or lock it up. But again, we do what we can to support our small businesses, and the employment insurance, that's contributed by the employees and the companies. That's their money. But the Conservative government have treated that as the government source for government revenue source, which is wrong. Again, so those are, we want to make it easier for and to support our small businesses because they're critical to our communities.
Thank you. And finally, for the Conservatives.
Hear me? Good. Yeah, just talking about small business, we've already discussed, I think we're the first to announce that we're going to drop the small business tax rate from 11 to 9%. We understand that the small businesses in Canada are what make this country tick and make it turn around for us. We've also done an actual GST reduction of 7 to 5%. Talked to some small business today that talked about the GST as being a challenge for them too, so we're trying to make it as competitive as possible. My first announcement as a member of Parliament back in 2011 was a small business grant to a company in Fort St. John that had invented a solar-operated valve for the oil and gas industry. And so we're supporting small business through initiatives like that, where we encourage invention and initiative. And the NDP talking about a 17 to 19% corporate tax rate, I don't think the NDP seems to understand who feeds the big companies like the mills in town here. A lot of the small businesses operate because of those businesses are in town. And the only reason those small businesses can survive is because we have a bigger industry locally. So I think to see 17 to 19% when we see the NDP complaining about companies like Caterpillar leaving Canada, that's exactly why. Is a higher corporate tax rate is going to be the reason why they look at other options. And I don't want to do that. I think 15% as a corporate tax rate keeps as many corporations in Canada as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is on seniors living in poverty. According to Statistics Canada and the National Advisory Council on Aging, the rate of poverty among the elderly in Canada is on the rise. 25% of seniors now live below the poverty line and struggle to survive. What measures will your party undertake to ensure that poverty among seniors is eliminated? The order today, or on that one, is Green NDP, Conservative Liberal. So if we can start with the Green Party.
I currently live in Vancouver and I work at AIDS Vancouver. I run the grocery program and we serve over 500 people groceries every month, and over half of them are seniors. And over 75% of that half are homeless right now. And so with our plan, we have a housing plan where right now in Canada, it's like a Band-Aid solution. People go into shelters and they get a meal and then they're back on the streets. We want to put people, seniors, homeless people, at-risk youth, everyone in homes first, so they'll have a base to start building from there. Because I don't know about you, but I don't know how anyone, I've seen it firsthand, how you would fix your life when you're living on the street. It kills me. So many people come in and the groceries we give them, they have to put half back because they don't have a stove to cook on. So I don't know how a person would have dignity and try to be able to move forward with living in that condition. So we have a housing plan where we, like I said, we put people in the homes first and then get the care they need. We also have a pharmacare plan where all of our drugs in Canada are free. No more paying for out-of-pocket expenses for drugs. A guaranteed livable income, so the minimum wage will be $15 to make sure everyone gets what they need. We're going to extend pensions. So a huge thing is to give people back their dignity. But anyway, the housing plan is the most important. Get people into their homes first.
Thank you. Next is the NDP.
The NDP, they will rescind the act which changed the age before you can get old age pension from 67 to 65. And also, as Elizabeth talked about in terms of the pharmacare, we want to, as an elder, a senior should not have to choose, well, am I going to buy this food or can I get this medicine? They should not have to be in that position where they have to choose one or the other, because they're both critical for life. Again, so we want to actually make the pharmacare more affordable to our seniors.
Thank you. Next is the Conservative Party.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, we just announced that another $2,000 tax credit for seniors, single seniors. We've also done a lot of seniors housing since I've come in 2011. We've made several announcements. Again, that was one of the main things that I was doing for a while, was making seniors housing announcements in the north. And in response to Ms. Dickey, one of the last things I announced in Fort Nelson was seniors housing money for a facility there. So once the facility is done, hopefully her grandmother or her future grandparents or future people in Fort Nelson can stay in care there. I do see a need to do better. I have two parents that are seniors. I have an 81-year-old father and a 71-year-old mother. And my 81-year-old dad still works every day as a carpenter, and I still see some of his income get clawed back because he makes too much at 81. So part of my thing, I think, is to go back and say, look, we need to do better in terms of not having that happen. A senior that's out there working at 81, I think they should be able to keep all their income. So it's something that I plan to work on when I get back, if I get back to Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, for the Liberal Party.
Well, I think one of the biggest questions we have to ask ourselves are, why are there so many seniors living in poverty now compared to what there was, say, 10 years ago? Really, what has changed? What in the economic climate has changed? I know one thing: seniors can't get any rate of return on their money because of a lot of strange monetary policy. So anyway, people living on fixed incomes, the cost of living is going really, really high, and the incomes are not going up with it. Now, just a quick thing: of course, we want seniors to be able to get their Canada pension plan at 65 instead of 67, and we'll do that. We also want to give them an indexed guaranteed income supplement, and of course that's tied to the real rate of inflation, not the bogus rate of inflation. But the other thing is, we do have to provide some reasonable alternatives for seniors' residences. And so Trudeau has basically said that he's committed to $6 billion over the next 4 years and $20 billion over the next 10 years in order to provide affordable housing. But I think the big question is, and I'm kind of posing this to you, what happened anyway? Why are things changing? And we'll talk about that as the night goes on. But essentially, I think that we see signs of a degrading economy, and the most vulnerable are the seniors on fixed incomes, and they're the first ones to feel it.
Thank you. Last question is on the economy and job creation. Question is, what will your party do to stimulate the economy and create jobs? Rotation is NDP, Conservative, Liberal, Green. Starting,
Okay.
sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so in terms of stimulating the economy, as the small businesses are the ones who create a lot of the long-term jobs in a community, and whereas a large corporation may come in, take up as much resources as they can, and then leave. But again, it's the small businesses that create employment and really grow the economy. With the NDP, again, so supporting small businesses and also innovation, putting in incentives for innovation, because we need to find solutions to all the challenges we face in this world in terms of climate change. That's a reality. We need to come up with changes. We need to have innovation. I'm getting in terms of supporting the local businesses, in terms of pushing for a sustainable, responsible development. So in terms of looking at the equation between developing our natural resources, but again, on the flip side of that is not only just developing and accessing and exploiting them, but also doing the reclamation and the cleanup and restoring. So again, that's the other side. So looking at the whole equation in terms of developing our resources. So, and then again, there's a great deal of jobs and everything that are tied to that as well, that equation. So expanding that. In terms of the Conservative, did gut a lot of the environmental laws and regulations. For instance, not so many rivers are protected again. So having the good, sound environmental monitoring. And there are jobs that go along with that. There are a lot of jobs that go along with that, a lot of jobs that go along with reclamation.
Thank you. And now for the Conservatives.
Yeah, thanks for the question again. Yeah, I think we've got a great record when it comes to job creation in Canada. I know in Valemount, for instance, I know you had a mill closure, and I think it's part of our job is, and I talked about keeping trade lanes open and opening up new markets for trade so we can get that mill open again here and get some jobs again going here. And that's what Minister Ed Fass has been doing. He's a good friend of mine, working tirelessly. And sometimes we see him get back from these trips working on these agreements. So we actually have markets across the way that want to buy our goods, and whether it's lumber, oil and gas, you name it, whether it's grain, whether it's canola, that's something that we work tirelessly on. We have a record of 80 plus free trade agreements so that those doors are open so we can sell our wares across the globe. And again, part of that is innovation too. I'm part of the Ag Committee, Agriculture, and one of the things that we've continued to fund in tight times to balance the budget is to make sure that we keep funding innovation. The farmers have said they want to continue innovating because they know that's the future. To stay where we are, we just can't. We just got to innovate and make sure we have better crops and higher yields and those sorts of things. So, and again, thank you.
Thank you. And now for the Liberal Party.
Okay, I'll try to be really quick here. You know, I don't want to contradict Mr. Zimmer here, but the fact is, and anybody can look this up really, really quickly, and you know, no amount of repeating that they've done a good job on the economy can make it true. The fact is that the last 10 years, we've had the lowest growth rate of any government, the lowest GDP growth rate of any government over the last 70 years. We've had the worst job creation record over the last 70 years. We've had the worst employment record since World War II, the worst trade deficits ever, the worst growth rate of GDP per capita, and it has been the best times for the richest 1%. But in any case, so what can we do about this? We're heading into a recession, and most economists will say that most responsible governments need to curtail spending during good times where the GDP is generally fairly stable, and then when we're heading into recession, that's when we need to actually start stimulating spending. It helps balance out these big economic swings. That's what the Liberals want to do. They, kind of like Paul Martin did, you know, had 10 surpluses in a row and then knew when it was time to actually stimulate spending, and that's what we're proposing. So we actually need to do this massive infrastructure spending while we're heading into recession and get people working, get the velocity of money going, keep things going, and we need to help people get through this recession because by all measures, it looks like it's going to be a bad one. Thanks.
Thank you. So that's the portion of the... oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me. My fault.
And the debate's on TV again.
Oh. You could tweet your things out.
Okay. I've touched on this before. There's two big things in our platform and our policies that we want to do to create jobs and create a green economy. We're not reinventing the wheel here. There's many countries all over the world already doing this. Germany just had 78% of its energy from renewables this year. Anyway, so our first one, we're going to stop subsidizing oil and gas, take away that $1 billion a year that we're giving them right now, and put that money towards green infrastructure and technology. Start building this new Canada. And we're also going to take, like I said, 1% of the GST, which is $6.4 billion a year, and bring it into local municipalities to retrofit all the buildings, to upgrade, to stop the leaks, to make them energy efficient. That will reduce greenhouse gases by 30% by 2020, creating jobs in a green way. So it's really exciting. It's not scary. In the meantime, we have a moratorium on more oil pipelines. So that doesn't mean it's shut down. We need oil and gas to transition into this new green economy. Nobody loses their job. Everybody comes with us. We just transition. It's going to take years, and we need to do it now. And we need to do it together. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I didn't forget about you. That's the set questions for tonight. So now we're going to actually open up the floor. The format for the open floor questions is as follows. Each person has 30 seconds to ask one question of any or all of the candidates. So you can direct your question to a particular person or to the table, all four persons, if you like. Candidates will have up to 1.5 minutes to respond. Okay? So we'll do the yellow light, the red light thing again, I believe. Okay? And if there is time permitting, and if you do have a second question, we'll try and come back to you and we'll try and get your second question. Okay? Again, I want to remind you that you must ask your question from a microphone. Questions will not be responded to in this forum if you don't use a microphone, and there's a reason for that. It's simply to ensure that everyone in attendance can hear the question, as well as those who are unable to attend and who will watch the forum later on VCTV. So we will now open up the floor to anybody who has questions.
I have a question for all the candidates. Being as the National Health Accord basically expired in 2014, will your government be sitting down with the provinces to negotiate a new health accord and a new funding agreement?
Anybody want any takers? Okay, so
We all had our hands up, so
you all have your hands up.
I think so.
It's an eager class.
Go
Excellent.
ahead.
I
They
like
can
that.
start. Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the NDP actually, they want to have establish a really strong relationship with the provinces because we are partners. And so the NDP proposed on meeting at least twice a year with all the premiers of the provinces. And actually the Health Accord is part of those discussions.
You're all adults. You jump in.
You're right. So this is this health accord expired in 2014. Prior to that, it started in 2004, and there was 6% stable funding, 6% increases up until 2014, and then it ran out, and the funding formula really changed, and basically it really hurt British Columbia a lot. And in fact, now the funding formula doesn't take into account demographics and an aging population in BC at all. And what essentially the people who are looking at this are saying is that it's going to cost BC about $5 billion per year, or sorry, not per year, but $5 billion over the next 10 years because we have this aging demographic in BC. And then in 2017, it's actually going to be a funding formula that is based on the growth rate in that province. What they essentially say is the bottom line is this: at its height around 1980, the federal government kicked in about 38% of the health care costs, and now it's down. It's going to go down to about 18%, which is really, really hard for the provinces. In other words, the federal government is really downloading a lot of the costs onto the provinces, and the provinces like BC and people like you are going to be hurt. We're going to reverse that whole thing. That's a big thing in the Liberal platform.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm trying not to say who to go, just to keep it open for you guys, so you've got a little bit more spontaneity. So unless you want me to tell you,
Just point at who you want, and then we'll go from there. I'm just trying to be polite.
Okay, I'll go. One of our big key things is we want to bring together all the municipalities, First Nations, provincial and federal, everybody on board on kind of like a community roundtable to sit down at a table together to discuss these things and move forward, because nobody's working together anymore right now in government. That's one of our things, building a Canada that works together, because you don't know what's happening on a municipal level in Ottawa. That's why it's really important for us to get all the different people together on every level to move forward and definitely reinstate the health accord. We have to look after our people.
Am I on? Okay. Yeah, just to answer your question, yes, absolutely. It's something that we've been supporting healthcare. Don't believe the hype of, I've seen the healthcare cuts on ads, and it's absolute baloney. We've increased healthcare by 6%, so 6, to the tune of starting at 26 billion up to 40 billion. We're going to continue increasing it at to 2017 at that 6% level, then 3% plus increases based on GDP, so on growth. Or else, if we don't do something and check it to GDP or tag it to GDP, then we'll have 100% go to healthcare. And there's a whole bunch of other causes like veterans and other issues that we still need to fund. It's a little rich, though, coming from the Liberals about cutting transfers to the provinces, though, and saying that they're going to change all that back. Well, I don't know if you remember this, but they were the ones that they balanced the budget on the backs of the provinces and the healthcare before. So just saying, we've continued increasing healthcare expenditures to BC, and BC is one of those many provinces that's received the funding. So like I say, don't believe the hype. Yes, we're going to be doing that, and we'll continue healthcare funding for Canadians.
Thank you. Next question to Mrs. Torgerson.
Am I on? Okay. This is for Mr. Zimmer and Mr. Shaw, particularly. Mr. Trudeau has suggested that it might be a really good idea to cancel the F-35 fighter jet contract. And I'm wondering, he says there's going to be no cost to that. I don't know, canceling a contract of that magnitude, I'm sure there's got to be some costs associated with that. For example, when the Liberals canceled the helicopter contract, it cost a lot of money to get it back. Those helicopters are coming on board now, but it cost us a lot to rejuvenate that.
Do we have a question?
The question is, what is going to happen? Is there a cost to this?
So let's, I believe it was addressed to the two gentlemen in the end there. If you'd like to begin, we can start with the Liberals first and then go with the Conservative.
Okay, this is one of my favorite subjects because the F-35, according to every military analyst who ever even looks at it, is the biggest turkey that's ever actually even been rolled out and foisted onto these countries who, essentially McDonnell Douglas wants them to buy it, and of course the Pentagon, because it's such massive cost overruns. They want to sell these planes, but nobody wants them because they're junk and they actually don't do anything that they're supposed to do. And our own military doesn't want them. Nobody wants them. Nobody in NATO wants them. And so why, because we're trying to do some favors for somebody, why should we actually have them? They don't suit the missions that we want. They're incredibly expensive to maintain, and they have to be serviced in the United States, not even in Canada. So it's a bad deal all the way around. Let's not waste a lot of money on this stupid industrial military complex nonsense when we could actually do it so much cheaper and so much better with a Hornet or some responsible military expenditure. So anyway, there's no way to really justify those F-35s. That's the day that they do that is the day that that we should all be really wondering what's going on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess Mr. Shaw hasn't talked to any F-18 pilots himself, because I've talked to several. And I like to get the opinion without even telling them who I am. Like, what do you think of the F-35? And the pilots explain back to me, they start saying by what the F-35 is capable of, and it's amazingly a capable airplane. I've talked to, several, and they go every other plane, and my colleague mentioned the F-18 Super Hornet. It's a fourth generation or 4.5 generation fighter, they call it. And the pilots always say to me, but it's not a fifth generation. The one pilot told me, we can reach out and touch somebody in a military engagement scenario, 360 degrees around them, and many, many miles away, with, I think, 9 different implements going off at the same time. It's an incredibly capable airplane. And some have asked questions about the single engine. The pilot told me back, the F-16 has been a more than capable plane for many, many years, long time ago, and that's a single engine airplane. I will say, Mr. Trudeau's facts about it's not going to cost us anything. Canadian businesses, especially in BC, already benefit to the tune of $126 million in contracts that have already occurred, building wingtips and different things. And it's Lockheed Martin, by the way. So I would just say Canada is going to benefit from this airplane. It's a costly airplane. The costs aren't going up as the Liberals are saying. It's a fixed cost for Canadians to purchase. And from what I've heard from pilots, it's a great airplane. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe you. You can answer that if you like.
I just had a thought. Like, it's going to cost us a lot of money to get out of or to repair the damage of the Harper government. We will lose money on those planes, but it's going to be worth it because we are not we're not a fighting country. Canada's peacekeepers. We have to get out of Syria, and we don't need fighter jets to drop bombs on Syria to call for peace. We're never going to beat ISIS. Canada is a peaceful country. We're not going to win. We're not the United States. So it is going to cost a little money to reverse the damages of the Harper government, but it will be worth it in the end.